the biggest banking bailout that you're not hearing about. I was talking about this, gosh, 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago. Um, the biggest banking bailout's been 0% interest rates. This has been theft. This has been theft on the working and middle class, and no one talks about it. So it's been and we and the fact is that we're still recovering from the financial crisis. There's no doubt about that. And think about it. Nobody went to jail for the fraud in the financial crisis, and nobody was even investigated. No one was even investigated. Think about that. It's pretty disgusting. You say you think that selling options is a good strategy, right? Is that correct? And let me just say something. Back when I was at Bear Stearns, there was a period for about 2 years I was trading options all day, every day. I was an options trading machine, and that was during the dot com uh, blowout and thereafter. It was a great time to be selling covered calls, and trading in and out of those positions. So I have a lot of experience trading options. So I'm not against it, but I think most people probably shouldn't be doing it. The vast majority of people should not do it. Let me explain something to you. If you have somebody that's pushing a options trading strategy, selling covered calls, and I'm assuming they're covered calls. Is that correct? Because selling uncovered calls is extremely risky. You don't want to be doing that. But if you have someone selling calls, that's kind of like a bad thing to do during a bull market. You want to be selling covered calls during a bear and a flat market, right? During a bull market, it's actually better in general to buy calls. Okay? You see? That's the deal. Because stocks, you're going to get the stock called away. You're going to tend to have the stock called away if you're selling covered calls in a bull market. That's just a general principle. Selling covered calls in a bull market is not generally a good approach. Really not. I think it's a better time to be selling covered calls in an uncertain market, in a potentially down market. This has been a good time to be selling covered calls, for instance, and I think it's going to continue to be a good time to be selling covered calls. Uh, but during a strong bull market is not a good time. And I'll tell you another thing. I never paid attention to none of that garbage. Alpha, beta, gamma, delta. I don't pay attention to that. Let me tell you how you learn options trading is you look at the quotes and you get a feel. The real money made in options trading, you know how you make the money? Is you get a feel for what type of price you put in. In other words, you can't put it. It's like the stock market now. You can't put a market price in. You're going to get shitty. You're going to get shitty order execution because most of the orders are being sold to hedge funds. So they're going to give you a shitty, and the spreads are big, right? Options, the spreads have always been big, right? So you can't put a market. I mean, you can put a market order in if you want, but in my opinion, from what I learned trading options was that the real money, how you make in trading options is you get a feel for the price you put in to execute, right? That makes a big difference on what price you're putting in to buy and sell those options between the spread. It can make a huge difference, and that did me pretty well. And the only way you can get a feel for that really is by just just following it and watching it and just kind of observing it, and putting skin in the game and practicing. That's really the only way you can do it, with the understanding that you don't just put a market order in. And one other thing, by the way, about trading options, let me just mention a lot of people that trade options, similar to technical analysis. A lot of these charting guys, these technical guys, they don't know jack shit about the stocks. That's nonsense. That's why I never known one of these charting experts that was really good investor. Technical analysis is a great tool if you use it appropriately. It's one of the many tools. I use it for timing, for risk, but you got to know the stock. You got to understand what's going on with the stock. The most important thing about trading options, in my opinion, is knowing the underlying stock. I'm not talking about looking at all the Greek letters. That's bullshit. I'm talking about knowing the stock, following the stock chart, knowing what's going on, having a history of that stock. Okay? That's how you understand the volatility premium and other risks if you really understand that stock. And that's why I traded a lot of covered calls because they were on the underlying stock. You see, the more you know about the underlying stock, the better off you'll become in making money trading options on that stock because you understand the volatility. It's not a number. You understand it. You know how the stock is typically going to react to certain material events or even certain just typical announcements. You see. Yeah, I don't have any experience trading options on the indexes. Um, I think that's something where if you focus on that and you have a pretty good understanding of what's going on in the market and stuff, and you really focus on that, that might be something where I think it can be a profitable thing because you're focused on that like one thing that doesn't change. See, that's the key. It's the more you know about what you're trading, the more successful you're going to be, which is why most of these people that trade they blow up eventually because they're just always looking for the next thing. Ah, over here. Ah, this is momentum. Ah, 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 ah. No, no. Once again, understanding when there's opportunities, right? How do you understand when there's opportunities? Well, you got to understand what you're looking at. If you know Microsoft stock really, really well, you're going to have a much better chance trading options on Microsoft, aren't you? Of course you are, because you understand a lot about the company. You understand a lot about how the stock moves, and you might even understand how the sentiment changes if you really followed it closely. And of course, options, puts and calls, they're derivatives of the stock price, right? They're derivatives of the underlying stock. So the more you know about the stock, it just makes sense that you don't need all these fancy things. Another thing, all these people use indicators. When I see somebody with with these charts, with all these indicators and all these lines going all over the place, you know what it tells me? They're fucking confused. All you really need to understand: support, resistance, relative strength, have an understanding of volatility, and a couple of other things. That's all you need, because just about all of these indicators are actually a derivative, some combination of all of those things I just mentioned. In other words, it's kind of like if you're always using a calculator, right, to calculate the simplest math problem, you're going to be dependent on the calculator, and you're not going to be able to solve a simple math problem. That's what people are doing when they're looking at all these indicators. I haven't looked at any of that bullshit in 15 years. RSI, MACD, that's all a bunch of garbage. In fact, like that all that stuff's outdated. You know why it's outdated? How do you think these algorithms are designed? They're designed to preempt all these indicators that trigger that all these clowns are looking at. Oh, once the RSI gets above 80, oh, I mean, you're just setting yourself up. It's like a landmine. You see? So the best way is if you really have a good understanding of the basics, the fundamentals of charting. Obviously, you don't need to know all the math behind Fibonacci retracements. You just need to understand the concept of retracements, right? It's very, very basic, very fundamental. I mean, everybody's different, though. And I tell people all the time. I say when I talk about, I say, look, this is my approach, and it works for me. I think it can work for everybody, but I say this. I said, look, even though if I say something is shit, it's trash. Don't ever let me talk you out of something that's working for you. Okay? Even if I say it's shit, Don't ever let me talk you out of something that's working for you, ever. You know why? Because everyone's different, okay? Everybody's different. Always remember that, okay? I'm pretty set on my ways on things, but I'm not ignorant to think that my way is the only way and everyone can use my way. If something's working for you, then stick with it.